Hello everyone, welcome to Down and Dirty. I'm Larry, and today we're going to fabricate an engine and transmission skid plate. First thing we have to do is replace the factory stamp steel cross member that they have for the factory skid plates. I'm going to replace that with solid steel. We're going to make that first, and then we will make 3/16 plate skid from there to the front of the engine. We're going to make supports going up to the engine mounts on both sides. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share, and comment below and let me know what you think. All right, let's get started. All right, so we're going to be making skid plates here. The front one's going to come all the way up to, this is the front axle here, looking at the oil pan of the diesel. Then go back to this factory cross member here. This perforated piece of tin is getting removed and getting replaced with a solid bar of steel. So this is what I'm making cross members out of. It's 1 inch by 2 inch. Solid bar stock. Not tubing. I'm mocking this thing up. Okay, so the sheet metal one we're replacing was 1 1/4 inch off the floor, or 1 3/4 inch, sorry, off the floor when I put it down here to see what I needed, because I want to make it basically the same so I clear the exhaust, drive shaft, everything else. So I have a 1 1/2 inch box tubing there and 1/4 inch plate, so that gives me 1 3/4 inch. Then I'm making it frame width, outside frame width is 46.5 inches. So I've got a 3-inch piece where it bolts to the frame. I've got a 6-inch piece to angle myself out or down. It's laying upside down right now. And now I have to cut a piece to go in between. And then we will weld this all together. So here's our mocked up new cross member. Now this solid bar stock. I made it wider because I want it to go all the way to the edge, outside edge of the frame rails. Factory one did not. We'll end up with all the same exact clearances as far as for drive shaft, exhaust, all that kind of stuff. So we gotta weld these pieces together. The frame rail where it bolts on slopes upward 7 degrees. So I want this large bottom piece to be perfectly flat or parallel with the bottom of the Jeep. So it's going to be a little tricky. We're drilling holes in this to bolt it to the frame. Right now I've got a center drill in here. It's a rigid drill. It's a small tip for piloting and then tapers up for lead in for a larger drill bit. This is a product called Edge. It's a wax. Use it for tapping, drilling. Way better than liquids. Liquids are messy. Get all over. Take our center drill out. Then we're drilling 9/16 holes here. 9/16 drill bit. Okay, have this thing all tack welded together. And a few things on how I did this. So we needed that 7-degree angle because of the slope of the frame on the Jeep. So I clamped these down flat. I clamped pieces under this part to set it at 7-degree angle. And then I lined this one up with this piece. So you can see we have some twist here. And this is exactly how I had it setting when I started welding it. So I tack welded in here, because this is our wide open V because of the different angles of the parts. All of these pieces where I butted them together so I knew where I was going to come out on length and everything, I just tack welded on top of that. This is going to get V'd back out heavily before it's actually finished welded. But this is to get it all together. So this is how it was setting initially, and then I flipped it over. So now after it's tack welded together initially, I was able to flip it over, and I took a grinder where this was just butted together like the other side was, and I ground this all out, beveled it way out so I can get a lot of weld in there. Basically, I beveled it all the way down to my tack weld underneath of this. So basically it's going to be completely filled with weld, and that's how you have to do thick material like this. This is 1-inch thick material. So then I was able to tack this side, opposite of the side that was just butted together. So now that I have a tack on the other side, I can take the grinder and I will heavily grind this out like I did the opposite side of this one. And then when I grind this all the way down to where I'm getting to my tack weld underneath, then I'll put another tack weld on this side to hold it all together as we're fitting everything up. I won't finish weld this thing until I know everything fits up the way that I want it fit up and it's all lined up properly. Then we can go ahead and weld this up complete all the way around. All right, so I have the cross member is all prepped, V-notched out. Obviously one side of each piece. It's already kind of V-notched to start with because of the way it assembles. So I had to grind out the opposite side and clean up around the edges. These pieces are pretty rusty. I purchased this, it was laying outside. Got a really good deal on it. So I just got to deal with cleaning up the rust. It's not super horrible, but we start welding on it, the whole thing. It's going to have to be welded in passes to have such wide gaps. Another thing when you weld across, it's extremely hot molten metal by the time you get from one side to the other. So it'll tend to want to like fall away, not really fill in real well. So you want to stop so you see the glow start to fade, hit it again, hit it again. Best way to get a complete weld. Got the two outside ones are done. Got one more pass on each one of these yet. Okay, last one. All done? All right, we got it flipped over and start working on the other side. So here we are, we got it all welded up, it's finished. Let it cool off. It's actually so hot now I could no longer rest my hand on it to weld. So it's a pretty toasty. So here's the difference in the cross member I made and the cross member they had from the factory. Hollow sheet metal, solid steel. I realize they do this for weight savings, but this thing don't last at all if you get into the rocks. But this one, gonna last. So here we are with our cross member bolted up. Fits awesome. Came out perfect. Nice cut. Love this Milwaukee saw. This thing is awesome, man. It makes the cleanest, smoothest cuts. Okay, so this is the second part of our motor skid. We cut that smaller piece earlier with the circular saw, cut this one out with a plasma cutter. So being an odd shape, just made it a lot easier. And all the edges that I cut on are going to get perpendicular about, I don't know, I'm going to 1.5 or 2 inch, all the rail all the way around it to help strengthen it. So with plasma cuts, you have to do more grinding if it's a finished edge. If it's going to be a welded edge, like these are all going to be welded because of the rail going around it, then it's not that critical at all, because you just weld it in. So this is where I've made it so far. So here's the, I guess the base plate, bolts to the cross member, first piece I made. And then this engine transmission part of the skid that we plasma cut out. Got it tack welded to the base plate at about 10.5 degree angle. Is what it worked out. Can be plenty of clearance for the oil pan all the way up at the front. That's the only place that actually comes close to contact. So right now I'm figuring out my sides. To strengthen this, you got to have sides welded on, like we do, or have on all the other skids I've made. So I'm going with 2 inch on the sides, these longer runs. Up front around the oil pan, I'm dropping it down to 1.5 inches because of clearance reasons. Now this one all clamped on. I'm just going to tack weld this, a few good tacks on it, inside and out. I'm going to do that with all of them, and then put it back up on there. Make sure everything, clearance is good, fit is good, everything else. So we're going to use our press brake here to bend this piece. Save on welding. It's good just cut and weld it, but that's what we bought this for. Square in here. It's not. That's square. We need to bend about 40 degrees. Without going over. We're almost there. Slightly past. We'll be okay. Okay, now we got a second bend to do. In the same piece. Try to eyeball it from the end. Alright, let's see what we got here. Turn them on camera. It's really, really close. Slightly off. Just barely slightly off. That's not bad. Actually, I eyeballed it from the end. I just held this up on the end of the press, sighted down apart while bending it. Came out very good. So this is the press that I'm using. I designed it as a bench top, basically, so I could put it on one of these little furniture dollies and roll it under the bench, get it out of the way. Didn't see a need for the giant upright ones, and it's very adjustable. I made it out of 2x2 1/4-inch box tubing, and I've got holes in it. And what it is, the top slides out of the base to make it taller or shorter. And then I bought this brake from Eastwood Company, and it works awesome. I love this thing so far. It has been fantastic. It all works great. Check out my YouTube video on how I made this press. I'm making brackets for the engine transmission skid, the front. It's actually bolts on to one of the motor mount bolts. I put a longer bolt in it. Removed the factory one, put a longer bolt in it to bolt this bracket arm on there. Now my press isn't rated for 3/8 steel for my brake. It's 1/4-inch steel. I actually put this in there and bent it a little bit. I need to bend each end just slightly to dogleg it. And it does fine with that, but it's never going to do it on 90, especially this tight of a 90. So I had to cut and weld this piece. I'm going to weld this on like so. So I've got it beveled all the way out. So with it clamped. If you welded that all the way across and you unclamp it, it's not going to be straight. So weld it on each edge first. I'm going to want to reverse this. And flip it. Now at this point, the iron's not going to do anything more for you. Trying to keep it from pulling at this point. I guess I stood it up. Wasn't in camera, but there it is, all filled in, welded. Got the mount bracket with the nut on it to the motor mount bolt. I had to back the bolt out. I bought extra long bolts, I guess. They're a lot longer than they needed to be. But I couldn't get this bracket in here with the skid in place. I didn't want to take the skid back out, put the bracket in place, because I had to take the bracket in and out to dogleg it in the press. So I backed my bolt up so I could slip this thing up in here. And now I used a center drill, drilled through the skid plate here and made a little dimple on the bracket. So I can take it all out and drill it out to the bolt size, which I believe is 10. So anyway, this is our motor, part of the transmission front skid. bolted to our solid cross member that we made. Okay, so now I have to make one more bracket for this side. It's hard getting up in here and this stuff. Everything's in the way. I'll point an arrow, but there's a long bolt sticking down up there in the motor mount. That's where our other bracket is going to go. So I'm gonna burn a little bit in on this side, and I'm gonna flip it over, do the other side, and flip it back over, and finish this side. Because if it pulls at all, I want it to pull up or this way, because I can put it in my mill, face it off, and make it square or perpendicular again. If I weld the other side first and it pulls that way, it's a lot harder to work with. And flip it over. Hold on this side. Try to keep getting too much weld around that hole. I'm still gonna have to clean that up anyway, but so I can get my bolt and washer in there. Flip it back over. And there we go. I'm gonna use cutoff wheel on my grinder. Just hold it flat on this surface and go in until I clean the weld back far enough that my washer fits back in there. Okay, got plenty of clearance for a washer. This is for the driver's side. Passenger side was almost straight. I had to put a little dog leg in it. Not a whole lot. This one's going to take quite a bit of angle. So there's our piece so far. Now I get my measurement and I have to bend it down somewhere out in here. Okay, now we're going to do the opposite bend. I actually bent myself a piece of TIG wire. So there's our piece so far. I've got the mounts that hold it in place from the motor mount down. See that one right there, the angled one. So everything's fit up great. Just got to do a lot of finish welding yet. So here's the motor slash transmission skid, all tack welded together. Front piece that I bent in the press to save on welding. There's a whole lot more I could do. That one I couldn't have really done. These end pieces had to be separate because of the angle change. It's like 10 degrees. But I had to slope these out and then bend that back in to go around part of the exhaust. Okay, I've started welding this up. I'm going to do about an inch, maybe an inch and a half at a time. Well, here's a piece of angle iron that's clamped to the table and I tack welded it to this piece. There's no way to really clamp this down. The other side I made just somewhat of a bracket, also to help hold it in place, but it's more for reference. As when I get done welding or as I'm going through the welding process, if this bolt still loosely fits, lines up with that bracket, I know I haven't warped or pulled anything. What I look for is for how warm it is with my welding glove on, how hot it is. If it's hot, then I don't want to weld in that spot again. Hasn't cooled off enough yet. Alright, the entire part is pretty heat soaked at the moment, so what I'll do then is I'll just stop, work on something else, give it time to cool back off so you don't get the entire part too hot and end up with warpage issues. So right now I'm cutting out a gusset I guess you'd call it, for this motor mount bracket. To strengthen it, I'm adding basically 1 inch all the way around on this one edge is going to be welded on. Okay, so this is 1/4 inch plate. We're using this just to strengthen that bracket because of all the bends in it, angles, and that is supporting and positioning this engine skid. It's going to weld this on here, so it will strengthen this from bending, twisting, or anything else. This one is mostly a straight piece, but side loading the skid, if you happen to side load skid or anything, I think I'm going to do the same thing. This made this a 1 inch wider than the piece. I think I'm just going to put a 1 inch strip down one side of this also. Okay, finished welding up inside, outside of the skid. As you can see there, stitch welds, like I said, you want to do about 1 inch or so at a time. Otherwise, especially with 3/16, you get it too hot and you're going to warp the whole thing and ruin it. So I'm getting ready to tack weld on my 1/4 inch gusset here. So that's going to be our finished product once I get it all welded. So it's going to strengthen this thing up, all these bends, this long straight area here. Stitch welding the bottom of this piece now. There it is, it's all done. I'll let it cool off here. I'm going to test fit it. Alright, so we're welding this 1/4 inch gusset onto our motor mount bracket. I weld 1/4 inch to 3/8. You can see I've already started this. I actually thought I had the camera running. It did. Alright, so now we need to cut an access door for oil changes. So we don't have to take this whole thing off, just do an oil change. So I cut a template out of aluminum. Used aluminum just because I had some scrap laying around for one. For two, it's faster and easier to cut than a piece of steel. And I drilled a 1/4 inch hole through the center, somewhat the center, not exact, doesn't matter, to bolt it down so I can go all the way around it and not have to deal with the clamp in my way. And then we will just weld that hole shut after it's done. So we're going to plunge through here, and the whole game plan is to go all the way up. See how this works. And there it is. All right, looks good. This is our trap door for our oil drain plug access. Actually came out really good. All right, now we're gonna weld on these tabs, plates, what have you, for the trap door for oil changes. We'll weld these on. I'm gonna have a bolt here, button heads from underneath, bolting this plate on. It can be removed for easy oil changes, so you don't have to remove the whole skid. There we go. I'm going to drill and tap these plates, or drill all the way through, and tap these plates, and then through drill this plate. Still got to weld up that whole wall yet, and this will be done. We can get it coated. Okay, we're going to drill our holes for bolting this plate on, our oil drain access. Already marked it off where I want them. Just gonna take this spring-loaded center punch, mark them. Makes it easier to start that way. I'm going to use what's called a center drill. It's a rigid bit. Has a small tip. These come in different sizes too, by the way. But it has a small tip. Basically, it's for drilling pilot holes. I use this LPS Edge wax. Especially with a center drill, you got to keep it lubricated well. And don't use WD-40. It's not a good lubricant for doing any of this. And that stuff's excellent for tapping. I've got some aluminum. It's actually flashing. Worked out to be about the right size to shim all four corners. Keep the plate centered in the gap as much as possible. What we're going to do is, this is our tap drill. The plate's going to have a through hole because the bolts come in from underneath. So we're going to run this tap drill through this plate, into this plate, enough to make pilots to where we can drill it out. Fastest, easiest way to make something line up like this. Okay, so we've got that one far enough. We'll drill this one. And we've got that one drilled far enough. Now we can take all this out. See where we've got this drilled? So it's right where the holes need to be. So we'll finish drilling that out with a through hole bit, because these are drilled out for the tap. Going with a 8mm by 1.25. That's what our bolts are. We have button heads here. So again, with this wax, you just fill the tap with this wax. Like this is only 3/16, so I really didn't need that much. If you're drilling or tapping a really deep hole, you want to do about half your hole, back it out, clean your tap off, and re-wax it again. It's the best way to do it. And you want to make sure your tap is perpendicular to the part. You go about a turn, back off. Keep doing that so you clean the threads. Clean the chips out of the flutes. You don't ever want to just start a tap and just run it straight in without backing off. Could end up breaking the tap or having torn, rough looking threads. There we go, we have our holes tapped. Here we are. Engine / trans skid is completely finished. Coated and installed. So it's all done. Fits up great. I guess maybe I should have shot a video with the door off. But anyway, door lines up great with the drain. So that's going to be awesome for doing oil changes. See over here, there's goes the motor mount up there. Bracket. For the driver's side. So anyway, here's the passenger side. Bracket that we made, it runs up to the motor mount, but I can't even get the camera in there. There's too much stuff on this side. Right there you can see. Kind of see the bolt nut up inside there. Extended bolt that we added in the nut. So she's all done. Looks fantastic and fits fantastic. So super happy. Ready to start on the center section. I'm gonna make that rear cross member next. Make a 1x2 solid bar cross member back there, just like we did up here. Do that next, and then we make the whole center skid section. Okay, so this concludes this video of making the engine skid plate with the new solid steel cross member. I think everything went very well. Everything fits up real nice. Made a little trap door and make it easier for changing oil. And all came out fantastic. All right, well, thank you for watching. Like, subscribe, and share. Take care. Appreciate y'all. Thank you.